What's up, everybody? This is the Act Man here, and today we're gonna talk about Destiny 2. I know what you're thinking. Was Destiny 2 doomed to fail, or could it have been saved? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this discussion and controversy, I'm not so sure myself. But seeing as how this was an opportunity for Bungie to reclaim their honor, and could have solidified Destiny as a worthy franchise, you've got to ask yourself one question. How could Bungie have improved Destiny 2? But before we jump into it, I want to let all you fabulous subscribers and viewers know that since hitting 100,000 subscribers, I've decided to hold a shoutout competition. Now, if you don't give two shits about this, you can skip right to the meat of this video with the timestamp on screen. Basically, I'm taking submissions from any small, aspiring YouTubers who believe they have something worth sharing, and whoever impresses me the most, whoever I feel deserves more exposure, will get a shout out at the beginning of one of my videos and on my social media. I'm looking for quality videos, channels with creativity, style, and drive. If that sounds like you, then follow me on Twitter and DM your submission, preferably your best video, to enter the competition. With that being said, this month's shout out goes to the Red Guy, who sent me the best freaking video review of Luigi's Mansion I've ever seen. It's fun, entertaining, insightful, and is pretty much what I would have done if I made a Luigi's Mansion review. The video has an astonishingly small 28 views, and the guy himself has 26 subs. So go show your support, check out his channel, check out the video, and leave a comment. Tell him Actman sent you. Now back to the matter at hand. The opportunities to improve Destiny 2 from the original were countless. They slapped Bungie in the face like a cold, wet dildo and screamed, "Improve me!" For casual and hardcore fans alike, it was truly upsetting how good the game could have been compared to what it turned out to be. So the ideas and possibilities to upgrade the game were limitless. But to keep myself in check, I've invited Renns Reviews to help me out.
What's up, everybody? It's me, your favorite little boy in the whole wide world.
Now, Ren, you are, or were, a die-hard Destiny fan who loved the first game, correct?
Yeah, you're vilifying me right out of the gate, aren't you?
I sure am.
Yeah, I absolutely loved the first game. Get your pitchforks out. I played for well over 2,200 hours, and I was in the top 1% of Crucible players. I loved it.
So there we go. Everyone knows you've got street cred, and you'll keep these ideas I have grounded in reality, in the realm of possibility, and offer your perspective as well.
You're goddamn right I will.
Well, there you have it, folks. So without further ado, let's lie to our fan base, charge people $20 for more of the same, and destroy our reputation straight into this. Most of the ideas and concepts we propose in this video are not going to be totally outrageous or bodacious. We want to keep things realistic and present to you what would have been the best what-if scenario. So first, let's identify what needs work, which is fucking everything, and go from there. If you were to compare the Crucible and the PvP content to the Bungie Halo games, it's far below their standards. The content and variety got old real quick in the second game. Now listen to what the inspiration for Halo Combat Evolved's multiplayer was, coming from the man who created it, Hardy LaBelle.
I really wanted it to feel like a party game with shooter mechanics, because I knew that if we put that out there and people could sit down on the couch and play together, or they could connect their Xboxes together across like a subnet on a LAN, that it would just create this incredibly powerful viral effect of people kind of enjoying the game.
Being a fun party game with a high competitive ceiling is not a framework that belongs solely to Halo. This philosophy could be applied to Destiny 2 with great results, while keeping what people already like about the Crucible still intact.
You know, Destiny 1 actually lent itself to being a party game really well. It was a game that focused on fun and fantasy more so than it did on being balanced and competitive. It was really easy to just pick up and play, but on top of that, there was a lot to learn in terms of tech, mechanics, depth. Things that people discovered that they could do in this game over the years were simply amazing. People were always finding out little tricks in the game that Bungie didn't intend. Things like Titan skating. I mean, if you were good enough at Titan skating, you could move about as fast as a sparrow. Little things like these added a little bit of accidental depth to the game. And if Bungie knew what they were doing, they would have adopted these unintentional mechanics and ran with them for the sequel, much like they did with zombies and other things like that from Halo 2.
You know, that is a pretty good point, actually. Take Super Smash Bros. Melee, for instance. It's one of the most revered fighting games because it was a fun party game at its core, but it was like an onion. It had layers of depth. Now, we're not proposing ideas to massively change the Crucible, just ideas to build on what is already there. So, 4 game modes with only 4v4 matches gets old real quick. So, create some big team battle shit. Create a few larger maps and just roll with the dice, see what happens. I mean, Capture the Flag would be pretty dope in Destiny 2. You'd think it'd have been real easy to add that.
Actually, it's interesting that you say that, because CTF was in Destiny 1, and it was, as you say, pretty dope. It was called Rift, and it was a lovely game type. Instead of a flag, there was a spark, and once you picked up that spark, you had 1 minute to capture that spark, or else you would explode and die. Destiny 1 had all the game types you'd expect from a Bungie game: 6v6, 2v2, 3v3, Rumble, Elimination, and each of them had their own unique twist. They even had private matches thrown in there after a couple of years for good measure.
Damn, I kinda hate to admit it, but you're making the first game sound kind of fun.
Thank you. It honestly, it really was.
And you know, simply adding custom games with options to tweak player stats, weapons, etc. would immensely strengthen Destiny 2's appeal. I'm not saying Bungie should just recycle all their old ideas and put them into Destiny, but just imagine the creative possibilities. Here's a possibly stupid idea: Exotic Shuffle. A free-for-all Slayer game type where every 20 seconds the weapons every player uses would change to a different exotic. That's the kind of crazy fun party game content that should be added to Destiny. Or how about some type of musical chairs game? Yeah, another stupid idea, but still could be stupid fun, where players are invincible and physics are increased, and everyone's gotta find and fight for the spots of light, and one person will eventually die each turn. I'm just saying there's a million things that could be done with this.
I don't think those ideas are stupid at all. They're good ideas. They'd be fun to play. But the problem is, they simply cannot be implemented into the game. We're dealing with a developer where it took them 2 years to just implement private matches into Destiny 1. And even
Jesus.
then, I know. And even then, the only thing you could do in private matches was customize the time of day and whether or not heavy ammo spawned.
That's pretty pitiful.
I know.
I mean, it's absolutely
pitiful.
Now, the things you've talked about are far too much work for those tender little snowflakes working over at Bungie. And I will be shocked if the private matches in Destiny 2 have any more depth than they did in the first game.
Yeah, you know, maybe you're right. Maybe I've still got leftover faith from Bungie's Halo games, and I should face the light, face the music, and realize what Bungie is now.
I have absolutely no faith left in Bungie, and it hurts me to say that as a lifelong Halo fan and a diehard fan of the first Destiny.
But I mean, the main point I'm trying to get at is people will have their favorite thing to do in Destiny 2. So the more quality variety of game modes and playlists and maps, the more likely players are going to stick with this game in the long term. I probably mentioned this once before, but in the Call of Duty series, my favorite thing was Demolition, right? That was my shit. I played that like 95% of the time in every Call of Duty game. That was my thing. And when they took it out in like Black Ops 3 and COD World War II, it was like, I don't care as much about playing COD. And so that's just an example, you know? And a series like this especially shouldn't backtrack on content and features in the sequel. That's just fucking stupid. Right, Ren, my buddy?
Absolutely. You preach it, sister.
I will. Another huge problem with the Crucible is how Bungie forced these concessions on the rest of the game in order to make Crucible balanced. Many people have complained that most of the weapons no longer feel unique or fun to use in PvP. It's like Bungie thought they could either have an awesome PvE experience with crazy badass weapons and no Crucible, or a few cool weapons with the rest being cookie cutter crap that is balanced for PvP.
Well, actually, the PvE sucks, so they didn't do that.
Yeah. Anyways, now I know people are sick of the Dark Souls comparisons, and I'm not saying Destiny is like the Souls series, but in this case, I think the comparison makes sense. The Souls games balance their PvE and PvP experiences based on level and how upgraded your weapon is, right? Someone in Dark Souls 3 that has the highest upgraded weapon can't go up against someone that has a weapon with no upgrades, right? But you still retain the damage from that weapon into PvP. So, Dark Souls 3 has some of the coolest fucking weapons known to man, and yet they're balanced, relatively, and usable in PvP. It's not perfect, but it's fun as hell for both types of play. Destiny 2 should have looked at the success of Dark Souls 3 and emulated that within the Destiny formula, instead of a PvP mode that has to strip away the fun from all the weapons. It could have been something that amplified it. If something is ridiculously overpowered, well, that's what game testers are for. That's what your 800 employees are for, Bungie. That's what updates and hotfixes are for, yeah?
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up Dark Souls, because Destiny 1 actually drew some inspiration from Dark Souls in some of its design. But what you've mentioned, again, can't work, because Bungie shot themselves in the foot with the design of Destiny 2. Say you have a massively overpowered Crucible weapon. That gun exists as itself, both in the Crucible and out of it. It's the same across the entire game. If they tweak it to make it weaker in the Crucible, then that tweak affects that gun again in PvE and all other aspects of the game. In order for them to do what you want them to, they would have to make another version of that gun specifically for Crucible. But then if they do that, that gives us a whole slew of new problems, because now each of the guns have duplicates. And that would be fine in theory if you didn't have to worry about vault space and cluttering up your primary slots with multiples of the same gun.
I mean, I guess you're right. It does seem kind of like a long shot, but that's for them to figure out. You know, they're the game designers, and if this is something they're going for, then, you know, the main point is just to retain the same amount of fun using the weapons in PvP and PvE, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if they did anything, honestly.
Instead of, you know, just cookie cutter crap. Moving on. So, as of writing this, I've beaten the Leviathan raid 3 times, and I can't help but feel this piece of Destiny 2's formula is fundamentally contradicting the rest of the game. It's like Chemical X. Let me explain. So the majority of Destiny is pretty straightforward in terms of gameplay. You follow the nav point, kill everything in your path, aim down sights, shoot. You don't have to think too hard to get through the entire game, the public events, adventures. You know, this isn't a fucking Zelda game. This isn't a terrible thing, by the way. It makes the game accessible and not overly complex. But then you have the raid, which is going to confuse and frustrate the living hell out of anyone who isn't an expert and researched everything beforehand or tediously went through in trial and error. Here we have a game that is more about shooting things till they die and shiny trinkets pop out than it is about actually solving puzzles. In the raid, this is completely backwards. If you don't know what you're supposed to be doing or how to navigate this ginormous ship, you're kinda fucked. I'm a pretty experienced gamer, and going into this, especially after playing Destiny 2's straightforward gameplay for so long, my team and I had no chance of completing the raid, if not for a couple people that knew nearly everything you need to know. This series appeals to people of all ages, and I can tell you right now, you probably feel the same way, but if you were a kid or even in your young teens, you'd have no patience for this shit. Don't get me wrong, it's a very challenging experience in those moments when your team is working together to accomplish the task, the trial. It's one of the most satisfying things about the game. Many people like the puzzles, and to a certain degree I like them too. The problem is Destiny has a lot of casual fans who won't be able to do this, and forcing you to not only solve puzzles, but solve puzzles with 5 other people makes the raid feel separated from the rest of the game. This is the only part of Destiny 2 where you can play with more than 3 friends, so it's important the raids can be accessible to most people who buy the game and grind to a certain level. I'm not suggesting the raids be tailored to the casual audience, as the hardcore fans would definitely have a problem with that.
Yes.
You don't want Destiny 2 tailor-made for the casuals?
No, I want a game that I can play with both hands.
Oh.
That's what I want.
Boy.
I want a game that I want a boss that I can't beat with my face. That's what I want.
I've seen that. I can't believe you did that.
Yes. It took 45 minutes, but I did it. I goddamn did it.
But yeah, I'm not proposing that idea. What I am suggesting is that Destiny 2 creates a couple more straightforward raids for those people who don't have time to meticulously research how to do it, or have parts of the regular gameplay contain some type of challenging puzzle so the player can accommodate to that when they do the raid.
I've often said that they should just do 4-man or 5-man raids to simplify them a little bit. They'd still feel epic and big and grand and whatever, but I'm with you here on this. It's night and day with the rest of the game in the raid. And one of my biggest complaints about the raid isn't the raid itself, but it's instead having to put up with somebody's incompetence for 4 hours because he can't make a simple jump or wrap his head around a certain mechanic. So instead of being overly cryptic and heavily reliant on the mechanical knowledge of the encounter, give us something that's more thrilling, as well as challenging.
Yeah, but I don't know, making content is hard for Bungie. Are you sure they can do that?
No, and you're right, making content is hard.
But yeah, you know what I'm saying. Have a separate raid that does creative things and doesn't expect you to be a master of fucking Rubik's Cubes. Again, the great thing about the Destiny series is it has such a wide appeal. It's not a game that requires you to pay extremely close attention to every detail. And it's great that the raid is a much more hardcore experience. I think creating a couple secondary raids with not so cryptic puzzles would go a long way, giving everyone more content while also making the real raid appear far more difficult in comparison.
Yeah, and having to find 5 other people to do this raid has never been easy. And even then, the raid rewards in Destiny 2 just are not worth the time. The raid armor itself has no unique perks on it, and all the weapons are underwhelming. There's no point.
Oh boy, and we'll get to the customization loot and all that jazz. We'll get there. But for now, I want to switch the topic to difficulty and enemy design. What made Destiny 2's PvE content get real boring was the monotonous design of the enemies. Don't get me wrong, it's fun to shoot things, it's real fun, but that fun wears down quickly when you realize all the factions attack you with the same patterns and that you don't really fight them any differently, that it's so easy to skip by them. All the basic infantry mindlessly and slowly walk towards you while firing. The Vex, Hive, and Fallen all have a suicide grunt type of enemy. The bosses do the same things too. If you get close, they knock you back, and if you do enough damage, they teleport. All factions have a burly unit with a shield, Not to mention there was only one new type of enemy added, which were dogs.
Yes, actually 2 enemy types, dogs and machete boys.
Excuse me, but they are clearly machete lads.
Okay. They're identical to every other enemy in the game is what they are.
Yes, but we'll call them machete lads.
I like that. But let me ask you this. What would you do to make the enemy factions better?
Well, basically, the first thing I would think of would be to differentiate the factions a bit more, in the way they fight you. The Vex are robotic, and they seem like the type to be real good at defense, holding choke points, perimeters, that sort of thing. What if they had some kind of network of mini-turrets spread throughout their bases, some on the roof, some underneath? What if the Vex had a self-repair mechanic where after taking a certain bit of damage, they'd run away and try to heal themselves back to full strength? Or what if some of those bigger bosses would split into 3 smaller robots after taking enough damage?
Too hard to develop, man. Too tough.
God, that's the problem with all these ideas.
They're all really hard.
The Hive's tactics should be to overwhelm the player, not just with numbers, but also debuffs, abilities that can blind the player, stun them, slow them, silence or disable their abilities. Perhaps the wizards play more of a support role and can also channel buffs for the other Hive units. And let me pitch this idea to you. If there's a bunch of debuffs, that opens up a new possibility for armor customization with perks that decrease the time of those debuffs. What do you think about that?
I like that. Honestly, doesn't sound that hard to implement.
It really doesn't. Now I'm thinking the Fallen should play the role of stealth and sniping. Perhaps they use holograms, cloaking, and prefer to keep to the shadows and strike at the opportune moment. Since they're scavengers, you can basically give them all sorts of different weapons. Shotguns, throwing knives, daggers. They fight with whatever they can get their hands on.
Yeah, they're real scrappy.
Scrappy fighters. And the Cabal are probably the most unique out of all the factions because they do personify brute force and strength. But we can flesh this out further. You know, what if you killed a high-ranking Cabal, and after that the lower Cabal would go into a berserk mode where they charge the player? Or what if they used a lot of real heavy weapons, the type that are super deadly if you're not careful? They've got strong attacks that are somewhat easy to dodge but can do a lot of damage. They'd have weapons like rocket launchers, miniguns, hell, give some of them 2 SMGs or something. Let us know these bad boys bring out the big guns.
I like that too.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be good. You'd have to prioritize what you want to kill first and start to actually think about the combat a little bit. I like these ideas.
Yeah, so the shooting is fun, but this turns it from mindlessly shooting to strategically shooting.
A little bit more like a game, I don't think you've played it, called Halo?
Nah, I've heard of it. Heard it was pretty bad.
Well, some of them are, but some of them are pretty good.
Yeah. Anyways, my point is these types of ideas would not just make the game more challenging and fun, and could also provide more customization options and strategy, but also force the player to make meaningful decisions, adapt to their surroundings, and it would characterize the factions a bit more. The enemies in Destiny 2 simply need better AI, more strategic AI.
Maybe they could have implemented all those beautiful mechanics you mentioned, if they had more than 16 months to make this game.
What those you mean, big boy?
You gotta say it the normal way, just in case.
What does you mean, big boy?
Well, halfway through development, Bungie had to scrap everything they had built for Destiny 2, and presumably start all over again. They even got rid of their lead designer, and they put Luke Smith in charge. Now this happened for Destiny 1. Activision didn't like the direction the game was headed, so they forced Bungie to restart the game, and they had 1 year to make it. But this time it wasn't Activision that made them scrap the game. It was Bungie's own incompetence.
Damn.
Speaking of incompetence, let's talk about the story and what they could have done to enhance it. Now it's been well documented that the story itself is garbage. But I think that the biggest mistake...
I thought it was decent. I thought it was alright.
Well, it's okay. It's good the first time through, but as soon as you put it under a microscope, it just falls apart.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was able to suspend any disbelief and kind of just roll with it.
And the music makes it magical.
Yeah, it wasn't anything like super powerful or impactful, but it's a story.
Yeah, and it was great for me the first time through because it was finally like a story with a beginning, middle, and end that we hadn't seen quite on that scale in Destiny. But I think the biggest mistake Bungie made was getting rid of all our gear from the first game. When they did this, they promised us a clean slate, despite the fact that they're bringing the old weapons and armor back from Destiny 1. Now, I don't know about you, but if I only had 16 months to make a sequel to a AAA video game, I would copy and paste some of the things from the first one over to the second one. You know, like certain weapons and some of the environments, some of the mechanics, some of the anything. I mean, it seems like an obvious idea to me.
Oh, Ren, hold up. I've got a better idea. How about instead of signing on with a publisher that forces you to cut 1.5 years worth of progress on your game, instead, you make a deal with a company that isn't led by degenerate fuckweasels that want to milk all their franchises until there's nothing left but the udders. What do you think of that idea?
I like that idea quite a lot. Or, what they could have done, when Activision wanted them to cut all their content, they could have just stuck to their guns and fought Activision. They should have used their Halo cred to prove that they knew what they were doing.
I mean, I would have done that. That makes sense.
Yeah, but it seems like they just laid down and died.
Yeah, remember when they fucking went balls to the walls to get Halo 2 out on shelves? And they cut the stuff from that game because they wanted to. It wasn't Microsoft, it was they knew they fucked up.
Well, we'll touch on that a little bit later. But honestly, not transferring elements of Destiny 1 over to Destiny 2, considering what time they had to make this thing, is the dumbest design choice they could have possibly made. Not only could they have built off of what they had already created, off of what already exists, but they wouldn't have thrown away 3 years of depth, and they wouldn't have messed with established mechanics that the fans were used to. As it is now, Destiny 2 is a neutered version of the first game. What they should have done was brought all our gear over. Everything we acquired in the first game, they should have brought it over, just so that we could have it, fool around with it in the Crucible and whatnot, but have the threat of the game be something entirely new, like a brand new enemy class from another dimension that our current weapons can't do anything to. Not because our weapons are too weak, but because they just aren't effective.
You know, to refine this idea, instead of like bringing over everything that each player had in the first game, when you transfer your file over to Destiny 2, you can keep some of the armor you have and, you know, get a choice of 3 weapons or whatever that you get to bring over.
I like that. Like, to make you choose what was your favorite, your top 5 favorite guns from the last game. That's all you get.
And then you can stick with that as you get all the new stuff and some of the old.
That could work too. But imagine some demigod from another reality has come to the tower to steal the Traveler's Light, complete with a brand new enemy race of interdimensional beings that we're not equipped to fight yet. And the only way to stop them is to travel into their dimension by getting some stolen Vex technology to acquire brand new gear like nothing we've ever seen before, as well as some new abilities and subclasses from their dimension that will help us fight them. And if you want more ideas, Bungie, how about a Guardian Civil War?
Oh shit.
Let's say I like this idea. Let's say there's a Guardian who got corrupted by the darkness, and he finds a way to harness even more of the Traveler's power. And as a result, he amasses a huge following of Guardians who have switched over to his side. And they're all bad guys, so we gotta stop them. Imagine fighting smart Guardian AI.
My god.
That would be awesome. I mean, they can do everything you can. They can use evasive jumps, use abilities, use supers, and I think that would really elevate the gameplay and could lend itself to a very intriguing storyline and villain.
I could get on board with that.
Imagine a raid boss who is a Guardian who made a deal with the Fallen, and he's fused himself with like Fallen or Vex technology or something like that, like a Guardian Vex hybrid. I think that would be awesome. But what do I know?
Yeah, what do you know?
Yeah, nothing. And before we move on, another thing they absolutely should have done was bring back the Grimoire. Grimoire gave the universe a sense of depth. Even if you didn't go online and go on Bungie.net and read those Grimoire cards, you knew that they existed. It filled the world with characters and stories that filled your imagination. Just knowing that there were hundreds of stories out there in the universe gave it more life. And the fact that Destiny 2 has next to no lore means that the universe is no longer filled with mystery, but is instead filled with nothing.
And they should have put it in the game like every other fucking codex system so that you can just read it in-game. That's the problem everyone has. It's like, why would I go read this dumb stuff on, you know, a website that I have to leave the game? It's like, they wouldn't feel that way about it if it was just in the game.
Yeah, put a big old book in the tower, get an intern to do some voice work, and bing bang boom, you got everyone's happy. That's too hard though. Too hard.
Hey Redden.
Yo.
You know what's the most important thing in a loot-based video game with RPG mechanics?
Is it the friendships that you make along the way?
No, it's creating a satisfying loot-based video game with well-thought-out RPG mechanics.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. I don't know how I didn't see that. I'm so dumb. You're so smart, Act Man.
Yeah, it does make sense, doesn't it? But you know what doesn't make sense is maintaining the exact same level cap from the first game. If there's one thing that shows just how much of a recycled game Destiny 2 is, this is the proof.
Take that!
It's such an easy concept to grasp. When you make a sequel, you improve it. Or at least you try. It says to me that Bungie thought 20 was a good level cap. Who cares if you can reach that in about 5 hours? Hey kids, making content is hard, alright? Give old Bungie a break. They've only got 750, 800 people working on a single game, and every single one of them needs to sleep for 18 hours a day.
Sounds like my mom.
Sounds like a sloth. Now I reckon a lot of you watching this, for those that are fans of loot-based games, have played the Diablo series. Now imagine if in Diablo 2 they made absolutely no changes to the leveling system. You'd be like, oh, why is this the exact same? And that's a general problem Destiny 2 has overall. But my point is you run out of things to do in this game so quickly that the low level cap just makes things worse. If you want to have a game with RPG mechanics, you can't really half-ass it. Especially if you have a leveling system. You've got to make it satisfying, it's got to be something to work and grind for. And from what I heard, people were pretty happy with the level cap being at 40 after the Taken King, right?
They were. Yes, they were.
Then for Destiny 2, start the level cap at 40, and then with each expansion, raise it by 10, or if that's too extreme, then 5. Alongside this, give a more complex and rewarding skill tree system, kind of like what we talked about earlier. Now, oftentimes, Simplicity is preferable to complexity, but if it's too simple, then the player isn't putting any thought into their choices, which makes them basically meaningless. How would you have expanded the perk trees for weapons and classes, Rennie me lad?
It's quite simple, really. It's elementary stuff. All they had to do was just elaborate on the already existing subclass system that the first game had. Give us some new subclasses to toy around with.
Who'd have thought of that?
No one, I guess. But as for the weapon system, just keep it the same as it was in the first game. Almost nobody had an issue with the way that worked, and it honestly is baffling to me that they changed it.
Yeah, I mean, you can just add new perks, new elements, stuff like that. Allow people to choose their perks in the subclass trees or, whatever. Not just have like 2 choices and that's it.
It's so watered down.
Now, with all the recent news and controversy surrounding Bungie's conduct of this game post-launch, it's obvious to see how the Eververse and Bright engrams have become the focal point of customization and Bungie's efforts entirely. The shaders being turned into consumables, the XP throttling, all this shit, it all points to a loot system with the best cosmetic items coming from microtransactions and RNG. This is a problem. Okay, so if you must have the Eververse and the microtransactions, which, spoiler, you don't, then don't add the majority of the customization into it and let players buy what they want from the Eververse, like Titanfall 2. What do you think?
They actually are, at some point, going to update the game so that you can buy what you want from the Eververse.
Yeah, but we all stopped playing it. This is like before everything.
It still doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I'm not into cosmetics at all. I've never cared how my avatar looks in any game except for Destiny 1. Because my avatar was a reflection of all the tasks I had completed. So of course I wanted to show off my flawless gear, because not many people had the skill to make it to the lighthouse and go flawless that many times. It felt great to show off my skills and make the little kids that play this game tremble with fear when they saw me. Having loot locked behind the Eververse means you didn't do anything to earn that gear, apart from typing in mommy's credit card information, which if anybody wants that, I'll display it right here on screen.
That's a good point. Even so, I think there's some merit to the way Titanfall 2 handled things. You've got your normal progression, and then there's these bonus skins, assassinations, etc. if you do want to buy them. It's almost just like bonus customization in the microtransactions, whereas all the other stuff is still symbolic of accomplishments. But it's not just the customization side of things that was severely lacking. Obtaining exotic guns and gear is far easier and more common than it was before. Sure, it might have been a grind to get stuff like the Gjallarhorn, but in the end it made it satisfying to unlock that weapon, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're not mistaken, and it is pronounced Gjallarhorn, my son.
Gjallarhorn. Gjallarhorn.
Yes.
Hey, I pronounce things a little bit different.
we mustn't disrespect the almighty Gjallarhorn. But the game just needs to be less casual. I thought Destiny 1 had a really decent blend of casual and hardcore. What this game really needs is depth, because I had mastered this game the second I picked up the controller.
So after the dust settled and the honeymoon phase ended, we all saw Destiny 2 for what it really was. A regression of everything Destiny 1 had built up to this point. I think it's safe to say once we realized how shallow and empty the game was, we all started to ask ourselves, why didn't they do this? Why wasn't this in the game at launch? Etc. It's a big red flag when you can take a step back from the game and see an endless stream of problems that could have been fixed.
Endless stream of problems sums it up really nicely. We could honestly sit here for hours and go through it,
and we still couldn't cover everything.
Yeah, but Bungie, baby, listen to me. You gotta man up. Don't complain, just make your game. In my eyes, Bungie has proven themselves to be incompetent by making the same mistake 3 times now, with Halo 2, Destiny 1, and Destiny 2. Their overambition seems to get the best of them, and they clearly don't seem to be able to properly communicate as a studio. They have over 800 people working on this piece, with a total of 4 different game studios, and they're having trouble creating content. They're saying that it's too hard to create content. If you can't make games because it's too hard, then you're in the wrong fucking business, buddy. So get out and let the big boys step in.
Yeah.
The point is, for this game to be any good, It needs to be completely remade from the ground up. It's very clear that there is no fix for this game, and that's why I am out.
You're out?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm out too. Fuck this game.
Fuck it!
But what did you think? Did you like our ideas? And do you have some of your own to share in the comments? I want to give big thanks to Ren over here for helping me with this video and providing me with his valuable insight.
Why is there sarcasm with that?
Trying to be funny. I'm just trying to be funny.
Okay.
No, you had good insight, no lie.
Thank you.
But go
You did
check
too.
out his channel. Links on screen and the description.
And thanks for having me on your channel, as always. I had a great time.
Thanks, me too. That's all we got for today. This is the Act Boy signing out. Peace!
Bye, everybody.